Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to another late night show of the Matura Express. My name is Karina. Over there is my great partner, Timna, who you do not see at the moment. She will be playing a vital, very important part in today's stream, so that's, even more important than me at the end of the day. So the plan for tonight is so it's exam night for her at least. So we will be doing a trial exam on social ties. It sort of ties up with, that was a word repetition, unintentionally so. It ties up with what we did last week. So in my exam that I put together, or in the exam that I put together, I tried to stick with the topic that I tried to kind of talk you through last week. So it will be about families, family types, and problems and challenges that the concept of the nuclear family, so the standard family, the traditional family that we know, kind of has. First of all, I will show you the exam, so I will talk you through both the monologue and the dialogue part and show you what I expect her to do then at the end of the day. Most of the exams kind of look the same, so there is a format that all the teachers who put together all exams, they their rules, there's a set of rules that they kind of have to follow. So I'll show you what your exam could look like. I tried to make it, one of the, an exam that could show you what to expect, really. I'll then show you the text. Last week I tried to cover scan reading and skim reading, two reading strategies. I talked you through the process of it, basically. I theoretically introduced it. I don't think that the text is really suitable for skim reading because it is a text that is structured in many separate paragraphs with one different heading each. So I think scan reading would be more apt for the task tonight. So I'll try and show you what you can do with the text, scan reading it, and then we will be doing the exam. Will be exam time for her. But as I said, first off, I'll show you what the exam looks like. So here it is. Classic exam when it comes to the layout. First off, do we have a light here actually? Is the light? Oh yeah, perfect. Kind of, yeah. So first of all, you always have a situation. In the exam papers it also says situation, kind of there to put you in a role, because in a role it is easier to talk about stuff because you are a certain person, usually an expert on a topic, because you are an expert, really, it's your kind of the fields that you're interested in, be it the job or be it because of school. Or very often you also get situations like do a presentation in school, do a presentation in your English class, do a presentation in your biology class in English for some reason. So you'll always be put in the situation of the expert on the topic, because that makes it easier to present and to talk about it in a kind of credible way. There is this, the task of the exam is that you achieve a certain kind of goal. In the first, in the first one, it is a presentation where you inform people about stuff. So you will have to tell your audience something about blended families, nuclear families, foster families. So assuming that you know more than they do, and you kind of put together a presentation that puts you in the picture, that puts them in the picture actually, sorry. So let's have a look at the situation first. You have to do a presentation in your English class on social ties. Social ties is one of the chapters in your textbook, in your schoolbook. And before the exam, you have to kind of summarize all the there's a pool of topics for the exam and you have to summarize all of them. It's your turn to do an exam on social ties. And because it is very hard to cover the whole spectrum of the topic, because social ties would be family first off, it would also be friends, would be work, would be school, whatever, like basically all the situations where there are other people in your life, really. So there will probably be a focus. Talking about social ties as a whole is a very broad range of like topics that you could talk about. So I tried to narrow it down a little bit. You focus mainly on the aspect family, because that really is a good topic to talk about. You already see there's a lot of different types of families that you can talk about, that you can have to say something about, really. You here have a real trigger for your interest in the topic. A while ago you watched a movie that was about a patchwork family and its problems. So you have decided to talk about this phenomenon because you needed to kind of narrow it down a little bit for your presentation, so as not to have to talk for like an hour. So you watched a movie on the topic, and that's why you decided to talk about it. Maybe the movie could also, you know, at the beginning of your talk, you should kind of address your audience, include them a little bit, like engage them a little bit into your talk. You could also start off with something like that. You know, recently I watched a movie, maybe you've seen that as well, blah, 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 with movie XY. And I thought it would be nice to talk about the concept of patchwork families, because in the media, we always, or because of what is portrayed in the media, we always think that they work so well. There's a lot of celebrities living in kind of a patchwork family system. And because of the media, we always get the feeling that they work so well, but there are problems as well. So this might be a nice introduction to your exam, to the monologue part. It's always good to have some sort of, like, you know, a lively and engaging introduction, maybe something else than the standard, hello, my name is, and I'm here today to do my levels in English, so much is obvious, really. So a nice engaging little story, can never do any harm. Same as in, like with German essays, you'll also try to get your audience's attention in the introduction, the very first paragraph. Holds true for oral exams as well, I guess. Might need a second highlighter. So we start off with the individual long turn, the monologue, as it is, monologue. So it's only you talking, you did a presentation or a speech, pretty much the same thing. The very first word or the second word of the bullet point is always the one that tells you kind of what to do. Here it is the introduce, vorstellen. You have to introduce the terms, you know, blended family, nuclear family. So you tell your audience, the examination board in that case, what a blended family is, what a nuclear family is, what a foster family is, what the difference is between a foster family and a step family, for example. That, like, single parents are pretty obvious, but you could inform your audience that there is an increasing number of single parents nowadays. There are statistics to like back up this fact. You've probably talked about it in your English class as well. So with concepts such as blended families, nuclear families, you could really inform your audience, look, that's what they are. Nuclear family consists of mom, dad, and a couple of kids. Blended families, kind of two families mixed together, really. With the single parents, you could say, well, we all know what it is, but there's an increasing number of single dads as well, which was maybe not so common a couple of years ago. So, you know, just introduce the topic and make sure you say something that you know about it. Then you have to discuss some of the challenges that the respective type of family may have to, or may be confronted with. So I guess there are some problems, some challenges, some difficulties in blended families. It's like two families coming together, only mom and dad usually knowing each other, but then there's a couple of kids who kind of all of a sudden are a family now. You could think of some challenges that this might pose to the parents and the kids and to like the extended family, to grandparents and so on and so forth. Focus on patchwork and blended families, because that's what the text is all about. You have a text. I'll quickly show you what it looks like. That was the text that I was talking about initially. Common issues in blended families, that's the headline. It's all about problems or challenges that they have to face. And that's why in your second bullet point you should focus on the aspect of blended families or patchwork families, because there you have like a text that tells you what you need to know and what you have to say. So that's, you know, makes it easier for you, facilitates the preparation. For bullet point 2, we're gonna go through the text in a sec. I'll just talk you through the rest of the exam as well. So for the second bullet point, you'd have the text to support you. It's not that you have to come up with all the challenges and problems and difficulties and benefits, of course, by yourself. In such bullet points, there's usually a text that gives you the necessary information so that you don't have to make it up by yourself. Outlines some of the changes that our perception of family has undergone in, say, the past 50 years. That's a random number, could have been 20 as well. Think about how families has changed, like comparing your generation and the generation of your grandparents, for example. That is not really a knowledge question. There's nothing in the text about that, but still there's something that you can talk about, of course, because that's kind of common sense. You know stuff like that, or you have an opinion on it. It's kind of an opinion, really, or your chance to state an opinion. A bit more than in the other 2 bullet points. So we have introduce, we have discuss, and in this case we have outline. The outline gives you the chance to include your own opinion as well, because it's not a summary of a text. Your bullet points will never say summarize the text, by the way, so it's always something else. It would be introduce or point out the most important points, stuff like that. It won't say summarize. Here in the outline and in the last bullet point number 3, is usually the one where you can kind of include your own opinion, or the additional knowledge that you gained during the preparation time for the exam. Like prior to the exam, you hopefully did some research. You did, like, you know, investigate into the issues. So that's the point where you can kind of show off your knowledge. Let's make it a bit more colorful tonight in the interaction. So that's the dialogue. Dialogue. Tricky word every now and then. In a dialogue, it's you and your teacher talking to each other. Your teacher in this case plays a role as well, so he or she is not the teacher in the sense that you know him or her. He or she is included into the dialogue and plays a role as well. In this case, the interlocutor, so your examiner, is a teacher as well, because we are in the setting of an English classroom, so of course there is a teacher present, and that's the role that she's like playing, or he. After the exam, you and your teacher start a discussion on the issue, because your teacher knew that you are, you know, she in that case knew what the topic of your presentation will be. So she prepared some statistics, or she found some statistics online that she now wants to discuss with you. I'll show them to you in a sec. So that's the situation. Usually the interaction part is like a follow-up to the monologue. It's you and the interlocutor discussing some aspects of the topic, either you know, having a discussion on the pros and cons. One of you is kind of in favor of something, the other one is kind of against it, or there is a problem that you have to solve and both of you have to come up with like solutions. It is important that the dialogue sounds as if it was a real life conversation, as much as this is possible in an exam situation, and like with a dialogue that was like kind of artificially created only for exam purposes. But It should be a real-life conversation, which means that there should be some questions, of course. There should be some, you should include some questions that kind of prompt a reaction in your dialogue partner. Right, do you agree with me? Stuff like that. So that the examination board has the feeling that there's a real dialogue going on, that there's an interchange between two people going on. So it's not, you do prepare the dialogue, of course, in the 30 minutes prior to the exam where you can prepare it. There will be time for you to think about what you're going to say in the dialogue as well. But at the end of the day, it should be a discussion that sounds natural, or as natural as possible. So it should be like a back and forth between both parts, question and answers and reactions. 2 questions. Also, you can post some questions, especially, of course, because it's not the interlocutor who is examining. So especially stuff like, do you agree? Stuff that shows that you can keep a conversation going. That's very important. Let's see what the exam tasks is. Discuss the statistics, which you haven't seen yet, which I'll show you in a minute. Briefly describe the most important information. So it will be your task to kind of, have a look at them and say, oh, well, yeah, I'm surprised that there is so many single parents nowadays, whatever. Evaluate some of the changes, how, like, one of the statistics obviously talks about career education and how the fact that a lot of people do have a university education or higher education nowadays. How does that influence family, if it does, according to you? How does it influence families, family planning? Also, a bullet point that gives you a chance to kind of add your own opinion, which is good, I think. Discuss Austria's politics in terms of parenting. Is there enough support for parents, maybe focusing on single moms, for example? Is there enough childcare? Can moms with the kids still go to work? Do we have things like full-day kindergartens, for example? Do we not? Do you know of any companies who would, as a benefit, offer stuff like that? So is there enough support, or is there still room for improvement? That's the 3 bullet points that you and your interlocutor will be discussing in the exam. Yeah, I'll quickly show you the statistics so that you know what I'm talking about. So there's some stats on families. In this case, comparing 1971 and 2001. For your exams, the statistics will probably be a bit more recent, like will be the latest statistics available. There was just nothing that I could find that I could copy paste without getting like in trouble with copyright and so on and so forth. So that was, the best I could do. So in the span of 1971 and like the time is under scrutiny here, we compare the early 70s and the early 2000s. The statistics are in German because they're about Austria. Hardly anyone, hardly any English-speaking country bothers to publish statistics about Austria, really. So that's why they are in German. But we are trying to, Austria is the place that you all live in, and you're talking about something that's close to your own life. That's why you are quite, if there's statistics, chances are that they are in German, also with some topics like unemployment, for example, like unemployment statistics, for example, because, as I said, England, America, New Zealand, whatever, they don't really bother to publish such statistics in English. And the second one's a bit more recent. It compares Lebensformen der Österreicherinnen, like how did we live in the past, like how did the Austrians live in 1985 and 2013. So that's the 2 years that are that we're gonna have a look at Here, in statistics, like I guess there will be a separate stream on how to evaluate visuals and how to evaluate statistics. What is important, statistics usually give you a quite good chance to talk about what you actually want to talk about, what you feel safe about. If there's a point that you're not quite sure about, that you don't have any background knowledge, just, you know, briefly touch upon it, but don't go into too much detail. Point out stuff that you find surprising. So changes, for example, if you have a line graph, one of those like, oh, my drawing skills. If there's like, well, it would be better if you couldn't, like, anyway. Like there's a peak, a quite significant peak in this line graph, so you could talk about that. Or if there's like a really big change in numbers in statistics like that, then you could pick out the most important stuff there. There's no need to cover all the aspects, really. First of all, because it gets quite monotonous for your audience to listen to, and you know, there is probably stuff that you don't feel safe talking about. Just skip it. Good. So that's the statistics. Once again, like family types and Lebensformen, like forms of living. Also touches upon the aspect of work, which is quite interesting because that's also related to the bullet points that I had in the exam. Did it change our way of working? Probably women work a lot in like part-time because there might not be enough childcare facilities in Austria for mums who want to work full-time. So that's, you know, kind of, the exams always try to like put some loose ends together, really, and the exam in an ideal case is conclusive in itself, and that's why these statistics are here. They should also give you some hints for the bullet points. Let's see if my strategy works. I'll quickly show you something about the text. As I said, the text might be quite useful for scan reading. Because it is a text structured in paragraphs, and the paragraphs do have headlines, which is quite useful because the headlines kind of function like keywords. They function like prompts for what to expect in the paragraph. So if you quickly need to talk about the challenges that blended families have, the patchwork families have, because you suddenly need it for the preparation for the dialogue, for example, you can only go in a scan reading process, you can only go for keywords in the headlines, for example. Okay, like sharing parents might be a problem. That's kind of self-explanatory, like it's kind of logical. It was only mum and the family, and now there's a new dad and new brothers and sisters, kind of, and it's kind of difficult to live with the fact that you get maybe less attention than you did before. Siblings, we know that it's word for brothers and sisters. Rivalry is kind of, we can kind of deduce what that means because Rivalität also exists in German. So a simple look at the headline kind of tells you what the whole paragraph is all about. Scan reading done because you know what the paragraph is probably going to be like. Slightly more difficult probably with the identity confusion. You'd probably have to read at least the first couple of lines because it's about name changes and stuff, which is maybe not like so self-evident from only reading the headline, but still, you know, name changes, okay, might be difficult for the kids to like have to adapt the new name, adopt the new name, and so on and so forth. Let's have a look at the second page. Second page talks about financial difficulties, scan reading done, self-explanatory, bigger families, maybe less money. Makes sense. Infringing on territory, you might have to read through that as well. But then you have bullet points, which are always kind of quite useful. Cells from square in the bedroom, everybody swaps. Okay, we know that now. So as to not have your kids fight over who has the biggest room, you should kind of swap, rotate. Makes sense. So scan reading done. In only 2 minutes, you kind of have the most important information about the standard problems that blended families may encounter. Actually, very smart to draw on my exam paper, which is a good which is a very good link. There we go. So all eyes on us. We're gonna do the trial exam now. So as always, so those of you who have watched previous trial exams with me, I am the teacher in like the role here. So I'm the interlocutor. Timna is going to be my victim tonight. So it's her go on the English Matura, and if you are ready, we're gonna start like right into the matter in medias res. So, hello to your English exam.
Hello, thank you.
Would you mind quickly introducing yourself first and maybe let your audience know what tonight's topic is, please?
So my name is Timna, and tonight I'm going to talk about families and social ties and what different types of families there are, what problems they can have, and especially about what are they called again? The blended families, basically.
Yes.
Where there are two parents with different kids from different marriages.
That sounds nice, with different kids. Like you just get them somewhere in the courtyard. Like,
that. No, you know what I mean.
Look for kids around tonight. Like just pick it up and
Kind of like that, yeah.
Sounds very interesting, though.
Yes,
so
well, I saw actually a movie about that recently, so that's how I...
Was the whole patchwork thing going well in that movie, or is it?
Well, the thing is, usually it's kind of conveyed that it should go well, or it mostly goes well in today's time, but actually in the movie they found out that it doesn't always go well. There are some problems that come up when you have so many kids and two families clash.
So sounds like a challenge, anyway.
Exactly.
So, would you mind just introducing all the family types that you think are interesting?
Well, of course, there's the typical family type that we all think about when you think about family. So, mother, father, 2 children, if you want. That will be the nuclear family. And then there's the more atypical kinds of families. So, for example, if you have single parents that look after their children alone, if you have, you could also say parents that are of the same sex, parents that have had a divorce and are marrying again, which would be the patchwork or blended families. We also have, of course, foster families that take care of children who have no parents. So they adopt children, and so nowadays there's actually quite a lot of different family types that we can see in Austria. And especially with patchwork families, there can be quite a lot of difficulties that they encounter since they have so many children. One problem that could be is that in sharing their parents' love, going from being maybe 2 siblings to having 5 siblings that all have to get some love from the parents can be, I believe, quite challenging to realize that you don't get as much care and attention maybe, which can, I think, also be difficult for the parents to try and counteract that. Also, of course, then with that comes along sibling rivalry. So especially between non-biological children or siblings, it can be quite difficult they can usually don't get along very well in the first few months, let's say, and then maybe it slowly kind of gets better, hopefully. Hopefully. But that's another thing that usually happens, especially if there's so many children. Another problem or another crisis that children can have is although it doesn't seem like a very big thing, is the name change. So, for example, if your mother marries again and she takes on a different name, and you don't, you still have your same old name, you might possibly feel a bit left out, a bit abandoned, a bit maybe like your mother has gone off to a new family and that's not you.
They're not part of it.
Yeah, although that doesn't seem like a big deal, it's just a name, but it of course can kind of get you, I feel like. Of course, the finances always play a role. If there's many children, there's a lot to pay. Maybe even a divorce that's going on, which takes up a lot of money and time. So that can be quite difficult for patchwork family parents to a difficult difficulty. Difficulty. Yeah, and then, well, if patchwork families move in together and they don't get a new home, sometimes you don't have money, as we just said, to just buy a new house, and one family moves into another family's already another family's home that they're already staying in. Then it can be quite difficult for, on one hand, for the family that's staying there to give up some space and to let these other kids kind of invade their space, if you want to say so. And of course also for those who move into there to feel at home and feel welcome and all that. So those are kind of, I feel like, a lot of the difficulties that you can come across as a patchwork family. And of course also these family types, especially with the patchwork, have changed a lot over the years and have grown a lot. Also, there's a lot more patchwork families and those types of families these days. I feel like maybe 50, 40 years ago it was more common to just be father, mother, children, and that's that. Nowadays also there's way more acceptance for different family types. The term is broader nowadays than it used to be. Also for just like I said, same-sex parents and all that. So yeah, I feel like it has changed quite a lot.
Also in Austria, some people say that Austria is not the most, how should I say, that changes usually take a while until they take place.
Yeah, that's true, but I feel like it slowly but surely we're also adapting.
Getting there.
Of course, it depends on where in Austria you live, whether you live in Vienna or Zillertal. It's something different.
So,
yeah.
What you're trying to say is that rural areas would still be a bit more traditional and like same-sex marriages, for example, would be more kind of common in Vienna.
Exactly, which is how it is in most parts of the world.
That's true. Yeah. Do you think that the nuclear family is not important anymore? Like so many.
Of course it is. Yeah. I believe that it doesn't really, or there's not really one family type that's more important than another. It's just how you choose to have your family and what works best for you. So it's not really. I think of course there's a lot of families that are nuclear families that work very well like that. It's just however you want to do it.
No, so you would not say that because there's some, if you type up or if you like basically research the topic on the internet, there's kind of like, well, yeah, our values are going down and we do not value traditional families as much as we did. So you wouldn't say so.
You?
No, I wouldn't either. I think that there's, basically, as you said, there might also be a change in, you might be part of a nuclear family then, or in the beginning figure out that it doesn't work and, go on to something else. So I guess we do not live as a nuclear family for the rest of our lives anymore if we kind of don't
have to
want
at
to.
least. Yeah.
But I don't think that it loses in importance. But you know, as I said, sometimes the internet is kind of like, oh, our values are like terrible, and young people don't know what values to have. And anyway, it's like I found some great statistics. Well, I found them, but they're gone now. There they are. So that we are, you know, on the same page. It's comparing the 70s, early 70s, and 2001. Is there anything that you find surprising, actually? Like something that you wouldn't expect from either the 70s or like 16 years ago?
Well, one thing that I found interesting was that parents that are not married, so like, parents that are not married, basically, have increased quite a lot. As you can see here, there was families with children. There were parents that were not married were 1.2% in 1971 and 4.5% in 2001. So that's quite a lot more, which I think is interesting. That it's not really seen as you have to get married to have children, basically. And as for all the other figures, there's not really a lot of change to be seen.
Sure.
Of course, there's some higher, some lower percentages, but nothing that would like struck you as completely different, or I don't know.
What I find interesting is the fact that the couples without kids has not risen all too significantly, like it's only 3 percentage points.
That's true. You would think that there would be way more couples without kids.
Especially because, like...
talked about a lot, sorry.
No, because the media always kind of say, well, Austrian families don't have kids anymore, and, you know, like, obviously there's sometimes classes in school where there's only, like, 5 kids sitting there, kind of thing. So that's kind of...
Work and career and all that, women have to have a career as well now.
Yeah, kind of surprising.
Still doesn't change as much.
Well, the 3+ kids has gone down.
Yeah, true. That's also a thing that... But apparently what I heard recently was that having more children is actually becoming popular again.
Okay.
I'm not sure like if that's true, but apparently people do want to have more kids now.
Again. Than they... Okay.
Just like in former times.
In former times. Interesting, because, you know, everybody is kind of like, well, raising kids nowadays is very expensive, and schooling's expensive, and anyway, how the whole thing develops. Anything about the second statistics that you thought was striking, or?
I feel like the numbers here also have quite stayed the same. The only thing is that maybe there are less families with children in 2013. But everything else has kind of stayed the same, which is interesting. I would have thought that it would change more.
True.
Time span now.
If you had asked me to like kind of draw the statistics by myself, only from what I think, I would have had, you know, bigger differences. What about, like, it says Teilzeit part-time here. Obviously, there's a lot of Austrian women working only part-time. Can you think of any reasons why women would, you know, want to combine kind of like sort of combine kids and work? That was a complicated sentence.
Well, of course, like everybody wants to have something to do in life, and that doesn't have necessarily have to be taking care of children. So of course you might want to have children, but you still might want to work, just the same as men can do. Why can't women do it? So that's, I feel like, why many women also go back to work. The thing is that they can't really go back to work full time because the childcare system in Austria is not the best.
No,
I feel like
Austria is such a nice place. Like, you have insurances for everything, and
yes, but if you don't have family to look after your children all day long so that you can work, you can't really do that, because if you put your children in kindergarten or somewhere like that, they're there for half a day, and then what should they do if you don't have family that near you that can take care of them? That's quite hard.
So you would say that the whole family of the concept of like extended families, grandparents, aunts, and whatever
is important.
Does play a role
Definitely,
here in this thing. Can you understand the whole career thing? Like, can you understand that women kind of, want self-fulfillment?
Of course. I mean, of course, there's women who are destined to be mothers, who only want to be mothers and want to take care of their children. But then there's also mothers who want to do something else, but still want to be mothers. It's normal. Why wouldn't it be different for women than for men?
So you say that Austria could do better.
I believe so.
In these things. Do you have full-day kindergartens?
I'm not sure if we do. Maybe we do have them in bigger cities.
Okay.
But like, for example, in the small town where I come from, I believe that the children are only in kindergarten until like 12 o'clock or something, and then
that makes
quite difficult for a mother to work then.
Can men take paternal leave in Austria? Is that a law that men can also stay home and take care of the kids?
Of course they can, but I don't think they can do that for very long.
Okay, so not as long as moms can.
No, I don't think so. I'm not too sure about that, but I believe they can't stay at home quite as long as women can.
Women can, okay.
And then also, as a man, of course, you can't, especially in the first few months, you can't take care of your child. It's the same as a mother.
Mother can,
obviously. Like, that's just how it is.
But biological
really do
reason.
anything about that.
Do you think Austrian men actually use it?
I've heard it recently more and more that they do. I think it's getting more and more kind of also acceptable, if you want to say that. That's quite late today. Because of course also among men it's kind of, if you stay home as a stay-at-home dad, you're kind of not a real man. You have to work and all that. I think that's also slowly but surely changing. Austria does change every now and then. Every now and then. It does. Yeah.
One last question, because your time's almost up. You talked about patchwork families, and there is one very famous family that kind of always propagated how successful they are as a patchwork family. Talking about Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt and their kids. Like there's some adoptive and foster situations and stuff. Do you think that the media kind of portray it in a wrong way? That they say, well, patchwork families kind of work regardless of, or does it work so well for them because they probably don't have financial problems, Are the media kind of portraying patchwork families as like a really cool concept and trendy and...
I think maybe the media convey those celebrity patchwork families as very cool and nice and well working, if you can say so, but I don't think they're really talking about like normal average patchwork families that don't have millions of dollars just lying around everywhere. Because you could presume that's the case here. Jolie Pitts, whatever they're called.
Whatever kind of mix they made out of their names. So
I don't think that there's a wrong image portrayed. Of course, it's also not talked about a lot about the problems there are. So
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I always they always kind of try to sell it off as the coolest concept ever, and this kind of it always depends on the context. Yeah, that's true.
Of course.
Well, thank you very much. Time's up.
Thank you.
So let's have a look at what I have to say about the exam. But there is not much to say really. I never needed my fantastic. I even tried to put on some really nice handwriting for you guys out there, but then I didn't need it. So good. Where's my notes? I lost my notes. How did I? Okay. So In your exam you have fulfillment. How do you spell the word fulfillment? Fulfillment. Is that the way to spell it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. There's one point in your exam that is task fulfillment. So that is basically about whether or not you covered all the bullet points that there are. You do not have to cover all 3 bullet points in the monologue now for the same amount of time. So it's not that you have to divide the 4 to 5 minutes or the 5 minutes, let's say, for the monologue in 5 divided by 3 and then talk about it for 1 minute and I don't know how many seconds each. Touch upon all of them. But focus on the one that you feel most comfortable with. Probably in the monologue it is the part that you have like a text to go with it or statistics to go with it because you have something to hold on to. But you can decide like where your focus is. You can decide on like basically where your emphasis is. She did that very well, and also there was there was a good structure, and what is important are the linking devices, linking words. Your examination boards want to know, as you know, that you are going to like change the topic and that you are talking about the next bullet point. So make sure that you introduce them, that there's some linking devices that make it clear that you change the topic. What else is there? Well, she has responded very well to all the questions. It was a real dialogue in the second part, very, very natural. It's, well, in the exam situation, what she did was asking me a question as well, not a question where, you know, that would trigger a massive, like, 10 minutes response from me, because that's not the point. I had the role of the teacher, I had the role of like the interlocutor, but the interlocutor has to make sure that you get enough speaking time. It's your exams at the end of the day. It's not your teacher's exam. So try to introduce some like kind of mini questions, like do you agree, what do you think, sort of stuff. It's, you know, you're playing the ball to your interlocutor. What he or she makes out of it is like, they know what they do and they will keep the response to a minimum, but still acknowledge that there was some effort on your side to like really keep the conversation going, or to like make it a real conversation, make it a real dialogue. So that's definitely a plus point, and that's also something that your interlocutors will note down. There's like a grid that has several like columns where you can tick stuff that you did well in that case, or tasks that you fulfilled, and that would definitely give you plus points like for the conversation, for the effort that you made to like also ask questions as it would be in a real life conversation. Anything else that I thought about? No. You in front of the screens could not see her exam sheet, but what she did was like highlighting some things. So in her preparation time, in the like fictitious 30 minutes that she had, she was actually trying to think about what is there in the statistics that she wants to talk about and what she doesn't want to talk about, what would be better to like kind of leave out because there is nothing to say or because you don't feel safe talking about it. So think about stuff like that in the preparation time. There will be nobody will force you to talk about all the points. So make sure that you can safely and comfortably talk about a couple of them, but not all of them. Good. I think that's it for tonight. Yeah, so we will be back with a different topic next Monday, and I hope to see you, and I wish you good night and thanks for listening.